The Frenzied Flame has always been one of my favourite parts of Elden Ring lore. Shadow of the Erdtree gave us some cool new Frenzied themed weapons, and it turns out alternating between two of them makes for an incredibly fun and super powerful build. To make this, I used my character from my Lord of Chaos run, but do not follow that guide. It's the most complicated run on this channel, and pretty much everything in it has now been patched. So grab yourself a normal faith character with all of these bits. Because I wanted quite a balanced character with decent progress in most stats, I started off this run with a little farming, so I could grab loads of upgrade stones and get my character to level 150, before heading to Rellana to respec for the DLC. In the Shadowlands, I followed my shortened setup guide, keeping within the first two areas and speaking to Arnspark along the way. So all three of our weapons and the DLC's one new frenzy spell are all in the Abyssal Woods, so that's where we're heading first. From the Morth Ruins, head down the crater to get to Bonnie Village, then all the way north up to the back of the Shadow Keep. Up the lift, light the storehouse back grace and jump down to the first floor, then down the lift and out to the boat area to find the secret room and start making your way down to the woods. Now for the Darklight Catacombs and Jori. For this fight I used the only frenzy weapon from the base game, Vike's Spear. It's a really good weapon. I never got round to making a guide for it in the base game unfortunately, but you can backstab Jori, then just strafe round to the left and repeat. Now the Madding Hand enemy drops our first weapon, but he's fairly good at memeing us with our own spells. You can, however, trivialise him with a good old 2-finger 50 count. The Madding Hand is a somber fist weapon that procs madness on NPCs and deals fire and physical damage. So you can kind of think of it as flame art iron balls if you like, which means it's pretty damn good. Run through Midra's manse, picking up Nanaya's torch just before you get to Midra. So Midra for the first boss of the run, and I actually loved fighting him at this level, as I feel he should be a lot more difficult than he is during casual runs. I went for a non-parry fight here to keep myself sharp on the moveset, but if you're used to parrying him, feel for it. We're going to be getting more Scadutree levels before we have to use any of his stuff, so you can come back for this one if you're not confident with this fight. Now back to the base game, to any of the available walking mausoleums to dupe his remembrance, to acquire both his sword and the spell. Now I did want the spell for this run, but not for any of the bosses. I did some quick testing and from that it feels distinctly average. But I really want to try it on a fully kitted out, optimised faith character before I pass judgment. And Morgoth's armour seemed like the closest thing to Midra's, so I grabbed that too. Now we're back in the Shadow Keep and heading up to the back section towards Gaius. So let's talk about this first loadout we have access to on this character. Much like any Starfist or Iron Balls run, it centres around getting naked for the blue Dancer Charm buff, then using the Stone Barb and Spike Crack Tears as well as the Axe Talisman, for a posture breaking bully build. We're not going to get quite as much posture damage as the balls or the Starfists because we can't add Crackblade into the mix. But as you can see, we can certainly do enough. Now back to the Scorch Ruins at the start of the DLC, and up to the top to grab the Blade of Mercy. For my second loadout, I made a Midra style parry build. Being a greatsword, the Sword of Damnation does massive riposte damage, while also being fast enough to get stuck in between parries. And when you get a chance, you can also go in with charges for big posture damage. For Rellana, 3 parries, 1 riposte, 3 charges, then it's all over. But I haven't even talked about the best part yet. Pretty much every boss in the DLC is weak to either holy damage or fire damage, hence why faith builds with an infusible weapon are my go-to for melee builds now. But by running these 2 frenzy weapons, you have a flame damage option from the Madding Hand and a holy damage alternative in the Great Sword of Damnation. Since the next fight is a wholly weak enemy that we can't parry, we want to head to the Templetown Ruins to grab the 2-handed sword talisman for some extra damage. Do note that the 2-handed sword talisman does not work with the Madding Hand or any fist weapons. And yeah, swap out the Flame Shrouding Tear and the Fire Scorpion Charm for their holy variants, and Putrescent's gonna have quite a rough time. While we're talking about talismans, let's go grab another that works great for this build. Back to the Abyssal Woods for some parry action to get the Aged One's talisman. So this talisman gives you a 20% boost to your damage for 30 seconds after frenzy occurs nearby. This buff isn't super useful for longer late game fights where you're not going to get enough time to set it up again mid-fight, but it works brilliantly for the early game, or on a boss that gives you some downtime between its phases. You can actually add to this buff a little more by using the Madding Hand, as that weapon does give you a smaller buff to your damage, again, after madness occurs in the area. However, they added a cool new torch, and I wanted to use it for something, and this seemed like the best opportunity. Now to the top of the Shadow Keep for Messmer. When you run past the Fire Knight on the 4th floor, be sure to drop into this room to get the scroll for Arnspark. And just like the Starfist fight in my last video, you really don't have to dodge many attacks with the Madding Hand. then to the ancient ruins of Rao, skipping down to the hippo at the start for a fragment, then you can follow my setup guide for the route through to grab the others on the way to Romina. Not much to say about Romina. With her low posture versus a fist weapon, this is about as easy as it gets. After burning the ceiling tree, you can head back to Arnspark to complete his questline. Then check in on Thiolier to make sure they both show up for the gank fight. And one of the disappointing things about Frenzy builds is most of the coolest attacks can't really be used on bosses, only NPCs. What that does mean though, is that I'm really going to fucking enjoy this. For the Radahn fight, it's just a matter of what build you want to take in there. For a parry build, the Greatsword is a no-brainer, and its holy damage will trivialise Phase 1, but not help that much in Phase 2. For a dodging approach though, the speed and usability of the Madding Hand will probably be the way to go. I was planning to respec a little for this fight, taking some of the points that I wasn't really using from Dex, Mind and In, and sticking them in strength. But happily, the sword was good enough for me to kill him in a couple of attempts without needing to, but it is an option if you're struggling with it. And finally, for Bayle. Fighting Bayle with a greatsword is so damn satisfying. The general guideline I follow is using tap R2s for mid-attack punishes, then full charges at the end of his animations. Doing this will get you a stagger fairly early on, and from there, you don't need to worry about too much of Phase 2. And that's it. How to use both of the cool new Frenzy weapons on the same build. If you've enjoyed the video, give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more. As always, thanks for watching. See you soon.